Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Tech Tuesday. It's good to see everybody this lovely, warm, pleasant evening tonight. And we start a new series tonight, and that's covering this little thing up here called your mind. And for those who were at Impact Summit, we learned all about mind power from certain people over there, and we got the book by John Keogh called Mind Power. So now we're going to learn a little bit more. How does our mind work? We all know that it works, but how, and how do we boost it with food? And if you're not getting the correct food, how do we boost it with supplements? So let me share my screen. Find these things that I don't need over here. That. Okay, so we are thinking about thinking, and we're learning how our supercomputer works and how to keep it fed, not fed up, but fed. According to Rene Descartes, way back in the Dark Ages, he stated, and I won't give you the Latin part, but the translation is, I think, therefore I am. So how does the think part work? So this is a very rough idea of what our central computer looks like. That's our brain. That is encased in this little, I call it a fishbowl. So it's fortunately not transparent, otherwise things could get a bit messy. But we've got this big sponge that's forced inside this little crash helmet, and that is what controls us. The brain is an incredibly complex organ that is the seat of human intelligence and the controller of behavior. The brain controls our thoughts, our emotions, our memory, our motor skills, breathing, and other processes that regulate our bodies and keep us alive. Now, some of these things we do obviously completely subconsciously and automatically, like breathing, and we can control it to a certain extent, because if you were diving, and you're free diving, and you don't exactly want to be breathing in and out, so you need to be able to hold your breath, and your brain controls that. But other things like your heart and digestion and all those things, we don't have to think about those. That's all controlled automatically over here. Think about your brain like the computer that you are looking at the moment, or at least I'm looking at the moment. And there's a whole lot of things happening in the background. We don't see them most times. We don't know that they're operating at all, but they're there. The antiviruses are there, and the various other things, the RAM and all those things are happening in the background. And the same thing happens with our brain. It controls our breathing, it controls our blinking, it controls our senses so we don't overheat or get too cold or any of those things. And it controls our memories. As the saying goes, sometimes I sit and think, and sometimes I just sit. And controls our emotions. Sometimes you're happy, sometimes you're not happy, sometimes you're stressed, depressed. Our brain is controlling all of that. Motor skills. You want to go and pick up a cup of coffee, or you want to go and pick up a pen and write very small, neat handwriting. That's all controlled here. And all of this is done in an organ that weighs about 1.3 kilos in the average adult. So there's no such thing as a big head, because we've all got, and I often talk to my patients and say, we've got this little bowling ball balanced at the top end of a skull, which it's on a little peg that controls where you can move your head backwards and forwards. But your brain is the thing that's controlling all of that. So learning more about this fascinating organ helps us to understand how we think and how we can support our brain or our brain health and our cognitive abilities. Because just like any other organ, your heart, your lungs, your stomach, your blood supply, your skin, your brain is an organ and it needs food. We are not machines. We can't plug into an electric outlet. We need food. So some of the key things to keep in mind. I won't get into the technical stuff over here to the right, but the brain and the nervous system contain billions of neurons that transmit nerve signals through connections called synapses. So I'll cover a little bit of basic anatomy over here. These nerve signals relay instructions that control all our thoughts, actions, and emotions. Again, think of a telephone system. We'll go back a little bit. We won't talk about the cell phone at the moment, but we'll talk about the good old-fashioned telephone system where you picked up your receiver, you dialed a number, and a signal went through from your phone through an exchange to whatever other phone is on the other side. Whether it's a phone, whether it's a fax machine maybe even a better example, because you're sending a fax, you put your piece of paper on this side, a whole lot of signals go through, and those signals then come together on the other side and produce that copy on the other machine. And this is more or less how the brain and the nervous system works. So the brain activates an instruction and it goes through the nervous system, very much like running through a telecom line, and it goes to the arm, the hand, the heart, the lungs, whatever, and tells it what to do. Neurotransmitters are chemical messengers that neurons use to communicate and pass on those nerve signals. There are many different neurotransmitters that can have excitatory, inhibitory, or modulatory effects, depending on the circumstances and receptors they bind to. Don't worry about the big fancy words over here, but you can get excited, you can be held back like depression, or you can have your emotions controlled. The brain and neurotransmitter activity can change with age or other factors, causing imbalances that affect cognitive and or motor skills. Think of somebody who's had a stroke. Think of somebody who has dementia. They used to be as sharp as a tack. They could remember everything. They could fill out crossword puzzles with ease, without any problems. And they wake up one day and don't know who they are. Very, very scary situation to be in. Now, diet plays a crucial role in cognitive health, like most things. Various nutrients like flavonoids, B vitamins, vitamin D, and omega-3s are necessary for proper cognitive and neurotransmitter functioning. So how do we think? We don't just sit there like that old statue. We do. We sort of sit there like that, and there's a whole lot of things spinning around in our mind. That is your brain at work. But how does it work? The brain, which is part of the nervous system, is made up of many different types of cells, just like the rest of our body. But one type, called neurons, is responsible for the signal transmission. Think of a cell tower. You pick up your cell phone and you punch in a series of numbers, but there's no tower. The power's down. There's no tower around to pick up the signal. You're never going to get your WhatsApp through. You're never going to get your phone call through if that signal transmission doesn't happen. The human brain has about 86 billion neurons. Not too sure who counted these, but we won't argue. Each neuron has a multitude of synaptic connections with other neurons, creating an incredibly intricate network to transmit all our thoughts and actions. You thought the internet was a complex system. Our brain is significantly more complex and, I would say, more capable than the internet could ever hope to be. All thoughts, movements, memories, sensations, and feelings are the results of nerve signals that pass through the neurons. Neurons receive signals at their dendrites and pass the signal through the cell body and down the axon. Please don't stress about the anatomy way of things and the technical side over here. This is really just how the brain works, and I like to do the technical little bits over here, but you don't have to worry about all these funny bits. Leave that for the brain surgeons to think about. At a junction called a synapse, the axon terminal releases the neurotransmitters which travel through a small gap to receptors embedded in the next neuron's dendrites, triggering the continuation of the nerve signal. Now, all of this happens in a nanosecond, not even a microsecond, a nanosecond. How long does it take from the time that you think that I've got to pick up this pencil to the time that the actions are actually done to activate the correct nerves, muscles, ligaments, thought processes to hold the pencil correctly, to pick it up, to know the amount of grip that we don't break it, that we don't hurt ourselves, all of those things. There are so many different actions that happen. We don't even know about it. So some of the major neurotransmitters. So the chemical things over here, acetylcholine. This is involved in muscle action and memory. And the potential effect on behavior, increased arousal. So you're fast asleep and you're awake and you want to know what's happening around you. Enhanced cognition. Oh, I recognize that face over there. Who's that person walking over there? Beta endorphins. This is involved in pain or pleasure. Touch the stove. Ow. Or enjoy a cup of coffee. Or allergies. And the potential effect is decreased anxiety and decreased tension. Instead of being stressed and tense and driving in traffic, you can now relax because your endorphins are activated. Dopamine, that affects your mood. Don't talk to me today because I'm in a bad mood. You don't have enough dopamine. Sleep. You didn't sleep so well last night. Your dopamine levels were out. Learning. You're sitting there studying and you think of the students that are studying at the moment and writing exams and they're going, I can't remember a thing that I've heard. And this effect is increased pleasure or suppressed appetite. GABA or gamma aminobutyric acid. Again, don't stress about the big fancy words. This is involved in brain function and sleep again. And this decreased anxiety, decreased tension again. Glutamate or glutamate is involved in memory and learning. And it's there to improve learning and enhance memory. Norepinephrine, this is involved in your heart, your intestines, and your alertness. Now, these are all your, what they call the autonomic nervous system. You don't think about it, it just happens. Can you control your heartbeat? Maybe to a certain extent you can, but generally you can't. The potential effect here is, again, increased arousal, suppressed appetite. Because if you're in the middle of a very tense, high adrenaline activity, the last thing you think about is eating. Serotonin. And I think a lot of people may have heard about serotonin, and you'll even get the serotonin supplements, but we won't get into that one tonight because, well, that's a whole other debate. And this is involved in your mood and your sleep. And if you have bad sleep, you're probably going to be in a bad mood because your serotonin levels weren't there. And this affects the modulated mood and, again, suppressed appetite. So the nervous system uses neurotransmitters to control the body, including the vital functions like muscle movement, breathing, because breathing is controlled by muscle movement. When you inhale, certain muscles are activated, and obviously your chest expands and all the rest. And then you exhale, there's more muscle movement. So all of that happens automatically, your heartbeat, your hormone regulations. Have you ever stopped to think about how you control your hormones? Not really possible. Your sleep, and a lot more things. Neurotransmitters are chemical messengers that are used to send and receive signals from a vast network of nerves throughout the brain and body. Yes, this is the central part, but you've got lots of little nerves in the tips of your fingers. You've got lots of little nerves in the tips of your toes. I'm not too sure when last you tried to move furniture with your little toe. Unless you have diabetes and no feeling in your foot, you're probably going to say, ouch, amongst other things, because the nerve endings are there, and it sent a signal back to the brain to say, hello, there's a problem. We've got an issue over here. There are at least 100 different neurotransmitters that have a variety of functions, and we've gone through these basic functions over here. Now, neurotransmitters can transmit one of 3 different messages, depending on the specific neurotransmitter and the type of receptor it binds to. Excitatory excites the next neuron and causes the signal to be passed on to the next cell. Glutamate and acetylcholine are both important excitatory neurotransmitters. Inhibitory prevents or blocks the signal from being passed along further. GABA is the most common inhibitory neurotransmitter, and others include serotonin and beta endorphin. Modulatory, this affects a larger number of neurons at once and influences the effect of other chemical messengers to adjust how cells communicate at the synapse. Many neurotransmitters, like serotonin, acetylcholine, and dopamine, can have modulatory effects in addition to excitatory or inhibitory effects. Some neurotransmitters can have either excitatory or inhibitory effects based on the specific receptor it binds to. Think about that receptor as a lock. You can have a whole bunch of keys, but until you put the correct key into that lock, nothing is going to happen. You can't start your car with your house key. You can't open your front door with your car key. You need the correct neurotransmitter, meaning the key, and you need the correct receptor, meaning the lock that key is going into, before it works correctly. Dopamine is one such neurotransmitter because it provides intense feelings of pleasure and reward and affects learning and memory, and also has modulatory effects. So think about studying. Think about you've aced your exam because your memory was top notch that particular day. How do you feel? You've just qualified as a director. How do you feel? You feel depressed, or are you all excited and happy again? Proper neurotransmitter transmission is critical for proper brain and nervous system functioning. So it's important to produce just the right amount of each neurotransmitter. Again, think of a key. You're not going to have a massive, great, big medieval lock or key going into your ignition. Imagine carrying that around in your back pocket. I carry all my keys in my pocket, and that would not work with me. Ever stood up suddenly and got the wobblies? Brains are energy intensive, and the average adult brain makes up only 2% of the body's weight, but it uses about 20% of the energy derived from glucose. So when you put that spoon of sugar into your cup of coffee, most of that's going to your brain. Now, what happens when people take diet tablets or they go on a sudden diet, one of these really bad diets that you can't sustain? Where's the first place that you're going to be losing your fat? Right here. So when people lose or do yo-yo diets, it's very, very bad for their brain. Aging brains may start to suffer from impaired glucose metabolism, which lowers the amount of energy available because as we get older, we don't absorb our food quite at the same level and as well as we do if you're the age of this little person in the bottom left-hand side. Aging also causes changes to the brain and the neurotransmitter activity. We don't all run around like a 2-year-old when we're a 92-year-old. Maybe some people do, like Charlie, but not everybody does that. The brain undergoes physical changes as we age, with its volume shrinking at around 5% per decade after the age of 40. So work out where your age is, or what your age is now, and how many decades that is since you turned 40, and that'll tell you how much brain power you've lost. Often, cognitive changes also occur with increasing age, with memory being the cognitive skill most frequently affected. How often have you heard people say, "Oh, I can't remember anything. I can't remember where I left my keys. I must be getting old." Well, they're actually speaking the truth. And we do start to forget. Ever heard that story about the person getting up and they're going to the kitchen and they can't remember what on earth they went in there for? Or they get off the bed and they run out the bedroom and they stand there and they're getting lost because they can't remember whether they're going to the kitchen to get a glass of water, whether they're going to the bathroom, or whether they're going to the lounge to read a book. They can't remember as well. And they have to stop, let their brain sort of catch up, and then hopefully they'll remember what it was they were doing. Neurotransmitter production and activity can also change with age. Just like we look on the outside, we change on the inside too. Dopamine and serotonin are two commonly discussed ones that decline with age. After early adulthood, dopamine levels decline around 10% each decade. This reduction has been associated with diminishing cognitive and motor performance. Other issues with neurotransmitter balance or receptors have been associated with various disorders and diseases. Acetylcholine is an important neurotransmitter that plays key roles in memory and learning, as well as muscle control. We've often heard it said, the brain is a muscle. And if you don't exercise your muscles, what happens? You lose them. Same with your brain. So serotonin is the happy chemical. It's that thing that we use, or the happy hormone. And it's that thing that we trigger when we're out in the sun, at the beach. And it regulates our conscious learning and emotion. Oops, let me get my head out the way. Research has shown that Alzheimer's, which is the most common form of dementia that progressively causes a decline in memory, thinking, and behavior, is associated with deficiency of acetylcholine in the brain. Parkinson's disease is a brain disorder that causes the loss of muscle coordination, affecting balance and movement, with some patients experiencing uncontrollable tremors. My father had this problem at one stage in his later years, and we eventually had a mug made. I think Jenny had it made. He had 2 handles on it. So when he picked up his cup of coffee, which normally would shake dramatically and he would spill it, we had 2 handles put on so that he could drink his coffee or his tea comfortably without spilling it all the way down his front. And that was caused by Parkinson's. Many symptoms of Parkinson's appear with the death of neurons that produce dopamine in the substantia nigra, which is a region of the brain that controls movement. Please know you don't have to know anything about all these bits and pieces in the brain. Another instance of neurotransmitter imbalance is with depression, where declines in serotonin and norepinephrine are observed. Serotonin is often called the happy molecule because of its part in regulating mood, sleep, appetite, sexual drive, and more. In addition to depression, low serotonin levels can lead to sleep disturbances and headaches. When people are depressed, they don't sleep well. When they don't sleep well, they're in pain, physical pain, headaches, and obviously then emotional pain as well. This is where the whole big vicious cycle happens. Too much of certain neurotransmitters can also cause issues. Remember, nature likes balance. Too much of something or too little of something can cause problems. An overabundance of serotonin or glutamate can lead to seizures, like epilepsy. Drugs that increase the level of GABA have been used to treat seizures because GABA's inhibitory action helps balance out the excitatory effect of too much glutamate. We require healthy neurons and certain balances of neurotransmitters in order to properly transmit signals used to control the brain and the body. So, how do we support a healthy brain? We can do, let me get my head out the way over here, the Mediterranean diet pyramid. Doesn't look like a pyramid over here, but you'll get the idea. And this is red meats and sweets. You need to take it easy on those things. Poultry, eggs, and dairy, you need to enjoy 1 to 2 times a week. Fish, seafood, and omega-3 rich foods, you need to enjoy those a lot more often, more than 3 times a week. Whole grains, legumes, fruits, vegetables, healthy fats, herbs and spices, every day. Physical activity, meal and family time, every day. So those are just some of the things over there. As our entire sense of self, our thoughts, actions, and feelings originate from the brain and actions of neurons, it's clearly important to do what we can to support a healthy brain and normal neurotransmitter function. One crucial component for maintaining cognitive health, as well as overall healthy aging, is a well-balanced and diverse diet. Time after time, the Mediterranean diet has been recognized for its myriad of health benefits, including better cognition in aged populations, lowered risk of cardiovascular disease, and certain types of cancer, and supporting a healthy body weight and blood sugar. Now remember, Mediterranean diet includes action as well as food. Mediterranean diet is characterized by an abundance of vegetables and fruit, whole grains, nuts, healthy fats like extra virgin olive oil, moderate amounts of omega-3 rich seafood and wine, with very limited amounts of red meat, sugar, saturated fats, and processed foods. Variations of the Mediterranean diet, namely the DASH diet, or the dietary approaches to stop hypertension, and the Mediterranean DASH intervention for neurodegenerative delay, known as the MIND diet, have been developed in recent decades to target specific issues. So what is the MIND diet? You need at least 3 servings of whole grains each day. You need at least 1 dark green salad and 1 other vegetable each day. You need berries at least twice a week. You need at least a 1 ounce serving of nuts each day. You need beans or legumes at least every other day. Poultry at least twice a week. Fish at least once a week. No more than 1 tablespoon a day of butter or margarine. Choose olive oil instead. And I would say, stick with the butter, forget the margarine. Cheese, fried food, and fast food, no more than once a week or less. I could have a problem with that because I enjoy cheese on a daily basis. Pastries and sweets, less than 5 times a week. And for the special occasions. The Mind Diet is designed to protect the brain health and prevent cognitive decline. The Mind Diet calls for increased amounts of leafy green vegetables and berries, specifically rather than vegetables and fruits in general, because they are rich sources of neuroproductive nutrients shown to lower risk of cognitive impairment. A multi-year study scoring the diet of almost 1,000 participants of the Memory and Aging Project found that closer adherence to the Mind Diet was associated with slower decline in global cognitive performance. What elements of a healthy diet are most important for supporting brain and cognitive health? There are numerous nutrients involved, but let's take a deeper look at a couple shown to be particularly influential in supporting a healthy brain and normal neurotransmitter function. And I'm going to stop right there. We'll pick this up again next week because I am running out of time. I'm going to quit this for now. We've got about 3 minutes left. If anybody has any comments or questions quickly before I mute.
Sean, I was just wondering, there where you mentioned the different chemicals, you mentioned 3 times suppress appetite.
Yes. Which is why people who are depressed often have no appetite.
Okay, yes, I can understand that. And the other thing was, you say the diet, you lose fat, okay, with the wrong diet. So what will be the fastest way to get that fat back in your brain?
Omega-3s.
Part of supplements.
Yeah.
But part of that in your diet.
Yes. So if you're not
just
getting
healthy food.
Correct. So if you've got to have the correct healthy fats, not the bad fats, the good fats. And if you're not getting enough, that's when you need to supplement with omega-3.
Okay, thank you. And the other last question is, you mentioned the Mediterranean diet and the normal diet. Now, if maybe I didn't understand that correctly, but if I look at the food of the Mediterranean diet, that is what we eat more or less per day. Correct. If you eat right.
That's it. You've got to be eating correctly. And that is the accepted diet. You don't want to have the SAD diet or the standard American diet.
Okay, no. Okay, no. At least I'm doing that.
Even the British diet is not a good one. So
that's the burger diet.
Yeah.